Here are 20 spotlights from The Last Disc on Earth, built on one premise, that come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. And if you agree, don't forget to subscribe. The Swimmer is a surrealist catcher in the rye for the Martini set, a suburban odyssey that treats the backyards of Connecticut as a jagged, psychological frontier, the American dream as a liquid graveyard. Featuring 52-year-old Burt Lancaster in the shape of his life, attempting to, inverted commas, swim home via a river of interconnected neighbourhood pools. For the disc enthusiast, Indicator put out a very nice package, sourced from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. The presentation captures the saturated greens of the Connecticut summer and the shimmering deceptive clarity of the water, with incredible precision and satisfactory mid-60s filmic grain. However, a film of this visual texture and historical weight justifies a native UHD. The 4K scan exists in the vault, so it's only a matter of time before a studio sees fit to reward the film with the top-tier presentation it deserves. The Swimmer is a journey that begins with the brassy confidence of a man who owns the world and ends in the cold, rain-slicked ruin of a life built on surface only. Burt Lancaster delivers the performance of his career, weaponizing his own legend. At 52, he is a specimen of terrifying athletic vitality, a marble statue of mid-century masculinity navigating a world of upper-middle-class ennui. But as the sun dips, his physical peak becomes a mask for a hollowed-out soul. Lancaster is the ultimate unreliable narrator, treating these hedges and diving boards like the Wild West, but with every pool he crosses, the hero narrative fractures. We begin to realise we aren't following a titan returning to his kingdom, but a ghost haunting the scenes of his own social and moral crimes, the suburban sin of pretending the party never ends. The film's production was as fractured as its protagonist. Originally directed by Frank Perry, whose hallmarks of clinical alienation are everywhere, it was eventually finished by an uncredited Sidney Pollack. This friction between Perry's cold observation and Pollack's more traditional dramatic polish creates a unique, unsettling energy, perfectly punctuated by Marvin Hamlish's score, which moves from adventurous, bittersweet confidence into a minor key mourning that reflects Lancaster's slow motion collapse. The Swimmer is a haunting, cold-blooded deconstruction of the American myth, a film that buries you in the final hour of cocktails where you've outstayed your welcome with the neighbours. It is essential, uncomfortable and devastatingly beautiful, and easily Lancaster's best performance, reminding us that the distance between the pool diving board and the abyss is much shorter than we think. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Born from the industrial decay of the pre-Disney New York underground, Abel Ferrara's Ms. 45 is a lean, ultra-nihilistic trajectory of urban isolation and unhinged vengeance. The film documents a city where tackling sexual violence can only be resolved with a loaded weapon, a work of cold efficiency that refuses to detour into unnecessary subplots or moral hand-wringing. The 4K transfer from Arrow Video provides a stable look at Ferrara's New York City, though it exposes the limitations of the original low-budget source material. There is evidence of slight grain management in specific sequences. However, the restoration stabilizes the film's high-contrast lighting and allows for a greater appreciation of the film's specific textures, from the industrial fabrics of the workplace to the metallic sheen of the 45 itself, respecting its gritty origins while providing a necessary technical upgrade. Ms. 45 centres on Thana, a mute seamstress twice sexually assaulted in a single day, a trauma that triggers a systematic lethal purge of the city's predatory male population. Armed with a stolen 45, she stalks the neon-lit streets, transitioning from a victim of circumstance to an indiscriminate executioner of the urban underground. Zoe Lund carries the film through a performance dependent entirely on visual surface. Forced to operate without dialogue, Lund conveys Thana's psychological shift through posture and a terrifyingly steady, hateful and nihilistic stare. Ferrara leans into giallo sensibilities, utilising sharp splashes of colour and operatic violence to punctuate the drab reality of the city. Through Lund, the film is quiet aggression personified, moving from the vulnerability of the opening act to the ritualistic violence of the finale without flinching. The framing and shadow work suggest a European horror influence grafted onto the asphalt of New York. Ms45 is a brutal, elegantly composed rage scream of a movie. It remains a central text of the early 80s underground, down to its minimalist essence, its Ferrara at its most directly affecting. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. John D. Hancock's Let's Scare Jessica to Death is proof that restraint can be far more damaging than spectacle. Made on a shoestring budget in 1971, this sinister horror never raises its voice, but terrifies using an eeriness cranked up to 11 from the very start. Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD release is fabulous, looking as if it was struck from a freshly unearthed negative, free of the murk and compromise that defined earlier home video versions. The restoration preserves the film's naturalistic 70s lighting, while finally revealing texture and depth that simply weren't visible before. Grain is stable and organic, and the colour and vibrancy looks just right for a film over 50 years old, still looking fresh and new. The Jessica of the title is the film's central victim, played with haunting, mentally fragile innocence by Zora Lampert. Recently released from a psychiatric facility, Jessica relocates to a remote farmhouse with her husband and a close friend, and what begins as a tentative attempt at recovery curdles when they discover Abigail, a strange young woman already squatting in the house. From this exact point, the film destabilizes the narrative. There's no familiar horror iconography such as dark brooding shadows or gothic moonlight. Instead, the film deploys the eerie calm of the daytime lake setting to knock the viewer away from their centre of gravity. Instead, fixating on environment, the stagnant water, the dry wood of the house, the faint electric thrum of the pulsating and innovative synth score. Everything feels slightly off, and the scariness is always 1 foot ahead of us. There are no set pieces here, no bravurous shocks. This is horror that works by attrition. It doesn't chase the viewer, it waits. And by the time it's finished, you're left sharing the same creeping paranoia as its central character, unsure what you saw, and even less sure what you should believe. Let's Scare Jessica to Death's great strength is its refusal to clarify its own rules. Is Jessica experiencing a supernatural intrusion, or are we watching her mental health unravel in real time? Hancock never answers the questions, and the performances are pitched carefully enough to sustain both readings. Conversations trail off, reactions feel delayed, nothing is underlined. The terror doesn't come from what appears, but what can no longer be trusted. Let's Scare Jessica to Death remains a standout example of tone-driven B-movie horror, earning its cult reputation through patience, atmosphere, and absolute confidence in its own originality of approach. Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD release is a perfect presentation, allowing the film's fragile textures and visual unease to register as intended in a sterling restoration, giving us full license to be scared to death with this perfect cinematic preservation. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. John Borman's Excalibur has for over 4 decades stood as the most feral, operatic rendering of the Arthurian myth ever committed to film. Moss-soaked forests, steel that flashes like lightning, magic treated as elemental force rather than decorative flourish. Released in 1981, the film captures the violent transition from enchantment to empire with a mythic intensity few epics have matched since. The sword in the stone carries weight here, heavy, blood-bound, inseparable from destiny. Now, 45 years later, Arrow Video have revisited the legend with a new 4K restoration. But how does this UHD treat the myth? Arrow's 4K UHD of Excalibur represents a long overdue cinematic upgrade. For the first time on home video, the original 1:6:6:1 aspect ratio has been restored. Earlier editions cropped the image, compressing Borman's vertical compositions and subtly diminishing the scale of his staging. The reinstated frame allows nights to stand properly within their environment, and the Irish landscapes reclaim their intended grandeur. Colour timing preserves the film's early 80s texture, metallic, overcast, saturated without artificial gloss. Greens feel damp and lived in, Armour reflects light with depth rather than glare. Grain is stable and intact, resolved with a density that respects the film's photochemical origins. The disc is a mighty almost 100 gigabytes of data and bitrate encoded properly. Detail improves substantially over previous Blu-rays, sparks from clashing steel, the texture of chainmail, candlelit interiors all benefit from the 4K presentation without drifting into digital harshness. Finally, Excalibur appears in its proper shape. Excalibur moves through birth, ascent, betrayal and collapse with muscular inevitability. The narrative spans decades without losing cohesion. Each generation inherits the consequences of the last. Borman directs with a mythical and yet realistic force. The physicality remains astonishing. Armour weighs on the body, horses churn mud, steel strikes steel with punishing force. Light fractures across polished plate. The kingdom feels damp, cold and elemental, forged from landscape rather than constructed for spectacle. The ensemble anchors the myth in volatility. Helen Mirren's Morgana coils with calculated menace. Nicole Williamson's Merlin commands every frame, sardonic, theatrical, unpredictable, a sorcerer who understands that power depends as much on performance as prophecy. Wagner and Orff surge across the soundtrack, lending operatic propulsion to the rise and erosion of Camelot. Borman charts ambition hardening into ego, loyalty splintering into rivalry, authority collapsing under its own excess. The legend unfolds with consequence. Every triumph carries damage, every victory extracts a cost. Excalibur endures as one of the great pre-digital epics, a work of scale, conviction and unapologetic intensity. Arrow's 4K UHD restores the film to its intended frame and texture, presenting the legend with clarity and integrity. For collectors and devotees of mythic cinema, this is the definitive home edition. A towering achievement, a corrected presentation, a legend reforged. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Bring me the head of Alfredo Garcia, Sam Peckinpah's cinematic act of self-exorcism. This is the director at his most unfiltered, aggressive and nihilistic, a sweat-soaked descent into the Mexican underworld that horrified critics and emptied theatres on release. Gone are any lingering traces of the heroic gunfighter myth. In its place is something far more rancid and far more honest. If you're looking for a sanitised revenge thriller, this is a cold-blooded, fly-blown odyssey about a man dragging a rotting head across a landscape of total moral decay and discovering there's nothing left at the end worth saving. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia has seen no shortage of home video releases over the years, from Kino, Lorber, Arrow and Twilight Time to this new 4K UHD presentation from Shout Factory. Sourced from a very solid master, the 4K leans slightly over-contrasted with colours pushed hot enough to reflect a relentless Mexican sun. Detail is sharp, grain is intact, and the image comfortably surpasses the battered 35mm prints that have long circulated on the repertory circuit. It may not be a revelatory restoration, but it's the strongest and most stable presentation the film has had to date, and easily the best way to experience Peckinpah's scorched vision at home. The film follows Benny, a washed-up piano player portrayed by Warren Oates in a performance of weary, tragic desperation. Benny is a man who has traded his dignity for a chance at a $10,000 payday, retrieving the severed head of the man who impregnated a powerful Mexican crime lord's daughter. What unfolds is less a chase movie than a road trip through purgatory. The heat is suffocating, the flies are permanent, and every encounter feels like another small humiliation. Peckinpah avoids any sense of fun or momentum, instead charting the psychological erosion of a man who slowly realises he is the punchline to a very dark joke. Oates anchors the film with a performance that feels more like collapse rather than acting. He wears his sunglasses like armour against the world that has already seen too much of him. The violence arrives suddenly and without ceremony, not as spectacle, but as inevitability. This is Peckinpah at the end of the line. Cynical, exhausted, and utterly uncompromising. What complicates that nihilism is Isla Vega, who plays Benny's prostitute lover, Alita. Often dismissed or reduced to a label, Alita represents the film's only fragile pulse of warmth. Their relationship is rough, transactional, and deeply imperfect. Yet Peckinpah treats it with surprising tenderness. For brief moments, the film allows intimacy to exist without irony. This is the purest expression of Peckinpah's worldview, a universe where everyone is compromised, redemption is an illusion, and the only thing left is absolute commitment to a dead man's mission. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia is Sam Peckinpah at his most nihilistic, and paradoxically, at his most romantic. Its brief flashes of tenderness only deepen the sense of loss, making the film's cruelty feel personal rather than performative. Shout Factory's 4K UHD offers the strongest presentation the film has yet received, and while this is a movie that actively tries to leave a sour taste, it remains a brutal, unforgettable piece of 70s counterculture cinema. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Tank Girl is a chaotic hot mess of 90s genre filmmaking that treats narrative coherence as an optional secondary concern. The film operates on a frequency where structural collapse feels imminent at every turn, a quality that defines its place in the era's counterculture cinema. Directed by Rachel Talalay and based on the British comic strip, the production attempted to scale a jagged indie aesthetic into a studio-funded wasteland. What resulted is a clash between the punk rock source material and the logistical realities of a Hollywood production. The 4K remaster from Vinegar Syndrome provides a detailed and unshowy technical presentation. It maintains a layer of fine grain that honours the 35mm origins without any heavy-handed digital smoothing often found in studio-led catalogue releases. While the live-action sequences are rendered with an industrial clarity, HD resolution further exposes the artifice of the studio-bound sets and the flatness of the studio hangar lighting. However, the animated segments are the primary beneficiaries of this UHD upgrade. They look fabulous with saturated colours and sharp line work that stand in stark contrast to the parched, dusty palette of the live-action world. This is a high bitrate stabilisation of a notoriously unstable production. In Tank Girl, Lori Petty provides the central anchor, inhabiting the lead with a 90s indie edge that maintains its posture even as the surrounding film begins to dismantle around her. Petty plays Rebecca, set in a post-apocalyptic 2033, who teams up with a pack of genetically engineered rippers to pilot a high-tech tank against a tyrannical water and power corporation, a corporate monopoly controlling the world's last remaining water supply. The narrative momentum of Tank Girl frequently stalls during clunky set piece after clunky set piece. These interior moments lack a lived-in texture, giving the film's second half a hollow, somewhat joyless rhythm. To bridge these gaps, the production utilises intermittent comic book style animations, which provide a necessary visual lift to the otherwise flat environments. The soundtrack leans heavily into 90s alternative curation. It is a disjointed audio experience punctuated by an unexpected 1930s Cole Porter musical number that underscores the film's anything goes philosophy. This bouncing tone is representative of the movie's struggle to find a consistent internal narrative logic, resulting in a viewing experience that lacks cohesion but maximises the number of highly energetic explosions and scenes of chaos. Tank Girl is a loud, messy chapter of 90s history, a film that disintegrates in front of the viewer, trading narrative stability for a relentless, erratic energy, led splendidly by Lori Petty. It remains a specific point of study for those interested in the era's attempts to commodify the underground, preserved here in a 4K UHD format that finally captures every jagged edge. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Richard Rush's The Stunt Man occupies a peculiar, jagged corner of American cinema history. Conceived in the waning glow of New Hollywood, delayed by studio hesitation, and finally released into a cultural climate already shifting beneath it, the film is part satire, part psychological thriller, part institutional autopsy. A movie about movie making that refuses to romanticize the machinery that produces it. Now, Radiance, through their transmission label, have delivered a new 4K restoration. For a film long confined to dated masters and peripheral cult status, the question is not whether it deserves rediscovery, but whether this edition finally grants it canonical clarity. Radiance's 4K restoration presents the film with a disciplined filmic integrity befitting its troubled lineage. Sourced from the original negative, the transfer retains a stable and organically resolved grain structure. There is no evidence of aggressive digital smoothing or revisionist colour timing. Instead, the presentation honours the early 80s palette, warm, slightly sun-bleached exteriors balanced against the theatrical artificiality of studio interiors. Detail is appreciably refined over previous releases, particularly in the film's elaborate stunt sequences, where texture and environmental density now register with greater authority. Contrast is controlled without veering into artificial sharpness, and the encode maintains a healthy bitrate throughout. The Stunt Man has never looked better. This is not an ostentatious restoration, it is a careful, high-caliber preservation, the kind of double jump upgrade that stabilises the film's visual legacy without rewriting it. The centre of gravity in The Stunt Man, with a huge tractor beam pull, is Peter O'Toole. As Eli Cross, director, manipulator, ringmaster, O'Toole delivers a performance of exquisite theatrical volatility. He moves through the film with martini dry wit and concealed menace, treating reality as malleable and morality as negotiable. Cross is not merely a character, he is the gravitational force. Opposite him, Steve Railsback's Cameron is an erratic performance as the fugitive absorbed into Cross's production. Railsback oscillates between paranoia and passivity. Where O'Toole radiates calibrated authority, Railsback often feels intentionally untethered, a chaotic counterweight that does not always harmonise with the film's operatic winking to camera centre. Director Rush orchestrates this imbalance with calculated flair. The film's set pieces blur the boundary between Hollywood spectacle and lived experience. Every explosion, every fall, every take becomes suspect. We are never entirely certain whether we are witnessing performance, manipulation, or psychological fracture. The Stunt Man ultimately is a cinematic hall of mirrors, one that implicates both the filmmaker and the audience in its construction. To conclude, The Stunt Man remains a singular and frequently misunderstood entry in early 80s American auteur cinema, but is still somehow a glorious love letter to the filmmaking machine. Its tonal instability is deliberate, its theatricality unapologetic, its ambitions far larger than its initial reception suggested. Radiance's 4K UHD finally secures the film's visual integrity, presenting it with the clarity and respect its legacy warrants. While the central dynamic may divide viewers, the restoration itself leaves little room for complaint. An eccentric masterwork, a definitive digital presentation, a cult monolith finally stabilised. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Jonathan Glazer's birth arrived in 2004 like a quiet scandal. A 10-year-old boy claims to be the reincarnation of a widow Nicole Kidman's dead husband. The premise is combustible. In lesser hands, it would collapse into melodrama or exploitation. Instead, Glazer delivers a film of austere control, a chamber piece about grief, projection, and emotional suspension. Criterion have now granted Birth a 4K UHD release, but does this presentation elevate the film's fragile atmosphere, or simply stabilise it? Criterion 4K presentation is measured rather than transformative. The film's intentionally muted early 2000s palette is preserved, pale interiors, wintry exteriors, controlled blacks. Grain is intact but inconsistent in density, occasionally appearing slightly coarse in low-light Manhattan sequences. Detail is improved over prior DVD editions, yet this is not a radical rediscovery. Instead, it is a careful, respectful upgrade that finally frees the film from the softness and compression artifacts that defined its earlier digital life. This is a faithful rendering of Glazer's restrained aesthetic, not an aggressive visual overhaul. Birth unfolds like a held breath. Nicole Kidman anchors the film with remarkable stillness, her performance built on micro-expressions and suppressed implosion. Cameron Bright's unsettling composure never tips into parody, which is essential given the premise's inherently absurd setup. Glazer frames grief as suspension, time stalls, conversations linger too long, music swells operatically where dialogue retreats. The film refuses to clarify its supernatural ambiguity, instead presenting reincarnation as psychological rupture. We are never quite sure how much to rely on the narrative presented to us. Birth is no thriller, Birth is pure atmosphere, a film about grief so profound, it distorts reality. Birth has aged into something closer to reverie than controversy, a controlled, haunting meditation on grief that now feels more assured than misunderstood. Criterion's 4K UHD is a respectful and necessary preservation, not visually explosive, but materially definitive for collectors. A cold, elegant chamber piece, finally given stable footing in a UHD format. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Hearts of Darkness is the definitive post-mortem of creative obsession, documenting the 3-year descent into the Philippine jungle that birthed Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. The production famously mirrored the very madness it sought to film. This is a work of domestic and professional espionage, utilising Coppola's wife Eleanor's private footage and secret audio recordings to capture a master filmmaker in a state of total, unvarnished emotional collapse. Functioning as the ultimate cautionary tale of the new Hollywood era, a moment where the director's ego was granted a blank check and a military-grade production, leading to a journey into madness and back again. Now, the documentary has been restored and re-released into a new 4K disc. The StudioCanal 4K UHD provides a significant lift for a film primarily composed of disparate, non-professional sources. The restoration handles the 16mm behind-the-scenes footage with remarkable care, resolving the heavy grain without sacrificing the gritty, candid texture that gives the documentary its "you are there" immediacy. In UHD, the contrast between the pristine 35mm clips of the finished film and the humid, sweat-slicked reality of the production has never been more striking. It is a stable, detailed presentation that breathes new life into the filmmaker's apocalypse, ensuring that the industrial chaos of the 1970s is preserved with high bitrate clarity for the modern digital purist. The narrative of Hearts of Darkness is as labyrinth and fraught with peril as the Joseph Conrad novella it references. It is a Fitzcarraldo-style odyssey where the obstacles, typhoons, breakdowns, civil war, and a lead actor in the throes of a heart attack become the very fabric of the story. Coppola is seen here as a man trapped by his own determination, famously admitting on tape that his film is not about Vietnam, it is Vietnam. The documentary succeeds because it refuses to be a standard promotional making of. It is a visceral, psychological study of self-doubt and the terrifying price of perfectionism at all costs, including one's own sanity. The film captures the twists and turns of a production that was constantly on the verge of being swallowed by the jungle, from Martin Sheen's near-fatal health crisis to Marlon Brando's arrival as a brilliant, unprepared and overweight enigma. The footage documents a slow-motion catastrophe that somehow resulted in a masterpiece. It is a deconstruction of the directorial myth, showing that the line between genius and delusion is often just a matter of actually finishing the edit. By framing the production as Coppola's own personal Heart of Darkness, the documentary offers a rare, unflinching look at the toll that great art exacts from its creators and their families. Hearts of Darkness is an essential high-stakes examination of the cinematic process. It is the gold standard for production documentaries, proving that the story behind the camera can be just as harrowing as the one in front of it. The StudioCanal 4K treatment elevates this piece of film history to its rightful place, offering a detailed look at the exact moment a director nearly lost his soul to the screen. Making great cinema is a war of attrition, and this film proves it. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Eyes Wide Shut, the final film from Stanley Kubrick, is not a grand epic. It is a stealth whisper, a dare, a provocation thinly disguised as a marital drama. Released just days after Kubrick's death, the film has never stopped dividing audiences. To some, it is inert and overextended. To others, it is a voyeuristic insight into desire, jealousy, and class power. Shot across an infamous 400-day production, the film traps real-life married couple Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman inside a vacuum-sealed emotional experiment. Their performances are deliberately controlled and slightly dislocated. Kubrick weaponizes repetition, dialogue loops, spaces are artificial, time stretches. A story of what happens when a stable marriage is destabilized by a single confession. The Criterion Collection 4K UHD arrives with serious pedigree. Sourced from the original 35mm camera negative and supervised by cinematographer Larry Smith, the film was presented in its theatrical 1:8:5:1 ratio with Dolby Vision HDR. Encoding by Fidelity and Motion ensures a consistently high bitrate. Grain is dense and intact, candlelight sequences retain highlight detail, black levels are stable. The controversy, however, lies in the grade. This master is noticeably cooler than the long familiar Blu-ray. The amber warmth of previous releases is reduced, replaced with a colder, steel-toned palette. Christmas lights appear sharper, flesh tones lean neutral to cool, interiors feel more clinical and teal-based. Whether revisionist or corrective, the disc is undeniably superior in compression stability and grain reproduction. The masked ritual sequence in particular benefits from the added HDR depth and colour separation. It is a colder presentation, but a more technically robust one. At its core, Eyes Wide Shut is about jealousy and male entitlement. Dr. Bill Harford, played by Tom Cruise, is a wealthy Manhattan physician who believes his life is secure. A beautiful wife, played by Nicole Kidman, social access to the elite, professional status. That illusion fractures when Alice, his wife, confesses that during a holiday, she once fantasized about leaving him and their child for a naval officer she had only seen briefly. Nothing happened, but the admission devastates him. Bill spends the rest of the film attempting to reassert control, sexually, socially, psychologically. He wanders through the night encountering temptation after temptation, a grieving patient's daughter who professes love, a prostitute who invites him upstairs, a costume shop owner exploiting his own daughter, and finally, an invitation to a secret masked gathering hosted by the ultra-wealthy. The ritual at the mansion is not about titillation, it is about hierarchy. Bill is not powerful there, he is an outsider, a spectator who has mistaken proximity to wealth for membership within it. The film charts his humiliation. Every encounter reinforces the same truth. His authority is conditional, his marriage is not immune to fantasy, his social standing is not protection, his masculinity is fragile. By the end, the threat of exposure and the possibility that forces beyond him are controlling events leave Bill stripped of certainty. He returns home not enlightened, but destabilized. Kubrick's last film is about the illusion of control, inside marriage, inside class systems, inside male identity. Eyes Wide Shut remains one of the most polarizing films in Kubrick's canon. It is structurally repetitive, it withholds easy catharsis, it denies thriller momentum, but it is thematically precise and deliberately constructed. The Criterion 4K presents the film with clarity and stability that earlier editions lacked. The cooler grade may divide opinion, but the technical upgrade is clear. For the Vault, it's essential. For casual viewers, it's challenging. For Kubrick completists, it's non-negotiable. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Released in the immediate wake of the new Hollywood breakthrough, Goodbye Columbus feels like a quieter companion to the era's more confrontational films. Adapted from Philip Roth's novella, it captures the late 60s suburban moment just as social mobility and sexual freedom were becoming visible and slightly uncomfortable. At its core, this is a class romance disguised as a summer fling, a working-class librarian pulled into the manicured orbit of a wealthy, status-conscious Jewish family in New Jersey. The film observes a culture loosening its collar, sexually and economically, while still holding on to the familiar structure of the studio-era love story. It is 1969 at ground level, sunlit, aspirational, and quietly self-aware. The Fun City Editions release is the first version to treat the film with real care. Sourced from a new 4K Paramount remaster, the presentation restores the full density of late 60s film grain, thick, textured, and unmistakably photographic. This is not a smoothed over image. Grain moves, fabric textures register, the bright suburban interiors finally carry weight. There are moments where the encode works hard to manage that density and does struggle occasionally, but overall this is a substantial improvement over earlier softer masters. For collectors, this is the edition that finally resolves the details from country club interiors to the humid glare of a New York summer. It feels stable, filmic, and honest to the period. Directed by Larry Pierce, the film clearly echoes the influence of The Graduate, though it lacks the same bite. Where Mike Nichols approached suburban malaise with icy satire, Pierce opts for something more restrained and observational. The emphasis shifts to performance. Ali McGraw in her breakout role plays Brenda Potemkin with easy entitlement, poised, attractive, and entirely at home in a world built on visible success. Opposite her, Richard Benjamin gives Neil Klugman a wary intelligence, moving through the Potemkin household as both participant and outsider. The soundtrack by The Association places the film firmly in its moment, though comparisons to Simon and Garfunkel inevitably highlight the difference in emotional weight. The film is progressive in subject, premarital sex, birth control, shifting class boundaries, yet traditional in execution. It stands between eras, the final stretch of polished studio romance and the more introspective character studies that would define the 1970s. Goodbye Columbus may not have the confrontational edge of its contemporaries, but it remains an important snapshot of late 60s suburban cinema. Its strength lies in observation rather than attack, in how clearly it captures class, aspiration, and the subtle tensions beneath a summer romance. Fun City's 4K sourced edition is comfortably the best home presentation to date, grain intact, colours balanced, details restored, a decent encode. For anyone tracking the evolution of the new Hollywood romance, this is a worthwhile addition to the shelf. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Sergio Corbucci's The Great Silence is the anti-Leone western. No sun-baked heroism, no romantic gunfights at high noon. Instead, snow, silence, and moral annihilation. Released in 1968 at the height of the spaghetti western boom, Corbucci strips the genre of myth and replaces it with frostbite nihilism. If Leone built operatic cathedrals in a desert, Corbucci drags the genre into a blizzard and leaves it there to die. But does Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD finally give this cult monolith the presentation it deserves? Or is this upgrade more incremental than essential? Vinegar Syndrome's UHD arrives with the weight of expectation. The image is sourced from a master that appears to trace its lineage to a 2K workflow, and that ceiling occasionally shows. Detail is improved over prior editions, but not revelatory. Grain is present, sometimes organic, sometimes uneven, with darker sequences revealing mild compression stress and intermittent digital smoothing. Snowbound exteriors fare the worst, whites are contrast boosted and the colours feel artificially oversaturated, combined with some gnarly, obvious macro blocking which suggests some poor quality control. Maybe this was better left at 2K Blu-ray level after all. For owners of the Eureka Blu-ray package, this is not a night and day leap. The 4Ks arguably failed by middling execution. In The Great Silence, Corbucci replaces dust with snow and moral certainty with collapse. French actor Jean-Louis Trintignant plays Silence, a gunslinger rendered mute, navigating a world where law enforcement is indistinguishable from bounty hunting. Klaus Kinski's deranged Loco is both a villain and a symptom of a corrupt system, calm, bureaucratic, and utterly merciless. The film serves as decent genre entertainment and also as ideological provocation. Justice does not triumph, heroism does not redeem, the landscape is not backdrop but executioner, a frozen expanse that reflects the film's philosophical temperature. This is a western stripped of catharsis, a genre post-mortem conducted in sub-zero conditions. The Great Silence remains one of the most confrontational entries in the spaghetti western canon, a grim, politically charged dismantling of frontier mythology. As a presentation, Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD has taken some digital shortcuts to the master that renders the final result middling. Overall, it's still an essential film, an okay release, not quite the final word, but still worth checking out if you've never seen it. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Decades before modern AI anxiety became a cultural obsession, Michael Crichton's Westworld was a chilling 1973 vision of the moment machines stopped obeying their creators. Crichton imagined a luxury theme park where the wealthy paid to indulge their darkest impulses: medieval knights, Roman orgies, and the American frontier. each populated by lifelike robots designed to be hunted, humiliated, sexually used, and killed without consequence. But what happens when the machines break free from their programming? And does Arrow's new 4K UHD deliver filmic preservation justice? The 4K UHD from Arrow Video arrives with a near-maxed 100GB encode, pushing the format close to its limits, yet the master itself remains uneven. At its strongest, the transfer reveals dense, tactile 35mm grain and impressive fine detail, giving the film a convincingly photographic texture. But other sequences feel less stable. Contrast spikes, colour saturation appears artificially boosted, and occasional digital noise reduction softens the natural structure of the image, particularly in the studio sequences. The result was a capable 4K presentation rather than a revelatory one. Compared with Warner Bros.' earlier Blu-ray, the upgrade feels more like refinement than transformation. A strong release without being spectacular, although sound enthusiasts should be pleased with the 4 different audio mixes of the film available. Predating The Terminator by over a decade, Westworld stands as one of the earliest cinematic confrontations with technological arrogance, a sleek piece of 70s science fiction fused with paranoid thriller. Richard Benjamin and James Brolin arrive at Delos, a corporate playground where wealthy guests live out their fantasies inside meticulously engineered historical simulations. Their destination? Westworld, a frontier town where the rules are simple: the guests win, the robots lose. At first, the park functions exactly as promised. The machines absorb violence, humiliation, sex and death, resetting overnight so the spectacle can begin again. Then the system begins to fail. What makes Westworld particularly fascinating is that Crichton refuses to explain the collapse. The film raises unsettling questions about corporate hubris, technological control, and the human appetite for cruelty, but never settles on a single answer to where all of this ends. And into that vacuum steps Yul Brynner's gunslinger. With the same black-clad iconography that defined his heroic Western roles, Brynner becomes something far colder, a silent machine executing a task that can no longer be interrupted. He's the man with no name on steroids. Ultimately, Westworld offers no speech about artificial intelligence, no grand revelation about the machines, only the terrifying simplicity of a system that has stopped listening. Westworld remains one of the most prescient science fiction films of the 1970s, a lean, unsettling warning about technology built to serve human appetites. Arrow's 4K transfer is solid, encoded nicely, not particularly referenced, but still represents the best way to experience Crichton's eerie mechanical nightmare, a film now more relevant than ever as AI takeover fast approaches. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Michelangelo Antonioni's La Notte, a stark, brooding meditation on the slow-motion collapse of a marriage set against the cold geometry of industrial Milan. Moving through a single day and night, the film captures a couple drifting in a vacuum of shallow social rituals and unspoken hostility. A foundational work of European modernism, documenting the precise moment communication fails and only the architecture of the city remains to fill the silence. A cinematic map of emotional exhaustion where every street corner and party guest serves as a reminder of a vanishing intimacy. The Eureka Video 4K UHD represents a landmark technical achievement for Antonioni's visual legacy. Sourced from a comprehensive 2024 restoration, the transfer resolves a dense, filmic texture that honours the original 35mm grain structure. A signature fidelity and motion encode ensures the bitrate remains high and stable, preventing any digital artifacts in the film's many static, deep focus compositions. The black and white presentation boasts immense contrast, the whites are crisp and clinical, while the blacks are deep and ink-like, granting the modernist architecture a newfound, tactile presence. A definitive upgrade for the archival vault, finally providing the fidelity required to appreciate Gianni Di Venanzo's sophisticated lighting. The narrative follows Marcello Mastroianni and Jean Moreau, Giovanni and Lydia as they navigate 24 hours of suburban and urban purgatory, beginning with a visit to a dying friend and culminating in a sprawling, hollow social gathering at a millionaire's villa. The film strips away the glamour of the Italian economic miracle. Moreau dominates the early sequences, wandering through the skeletal remains of the city outskirts, her silence more communicative than the intellectual posturing of the men surrounding her. Antonioni utilises the environment as a psychological mirror. The glass, steel and concrete of Milan function not just as a backdrop, but as the primary obstacle to human connection. The night of the title becomes a sprawling, aimless masquerade where flirtation and infidelity are merely distractions from a pervasive existential boredom. Through Mastroianni's passive, drifting performance, the film explores the fragility of the creative ego and the ultimate futility of words in a relationship that has already intellectually and physically expired. A haunting visual document of the void that not even Monica Vitti can intercept. Despite focusing on marital breakdown, Notte remains a brutal, elegantly composed and calm movie, a central text of the 1960s European avant-garde, stripping the marital drama down to its minimalist essence. Through Eureka's 4K UHD, Antonioni's vision of urban disconnection is preserved with a clarity that captures every fractured shadow, essential, uncompromising and deeply affecting. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Claire Denis' Trouble Every Day is an unflinching collision where body horror vampire tropes combine with uncompromising textures of European art house cinema. This is a film that treats the craving for flesh and blood not as a supernatural curse, but as a devastating compulsive sexual addiction. It sidesteps the noir romanticism usually associated with the genre, instead presenting a clinical and disturbing metaphor for the cannibalistic nature of human desire. A work of immense sensory power, functioning on a frequency where mood and sound unsettle the viewer far more effectively than any traditional narrative structure. The Eureka Video 4K UHD release provides a formidable archival presentation of Denis' unsettling vision. Encoded with typical precision by fidelity and motion, the disc offers a strong, robust and deeply filmic handling of the original elements. The high bitrate transfer stabilizes the film's often dim, naturalistic lighting, resolving fine grain and skin textures with a clarity that heightens the physical discomfort of the subject matter. This UHD upgrade finally grants the film the technical stability it requires, ensuring that the fluid, often blurred boundaries between the beautiful and the grotesque are rendered with cinematic arthouse respect. The plot follows two parallel trajectories of a shared medical and psychological hunger. Shane, played by Vincent Gallo, an American newlywed in Paris, is desperately searching for a rogue doctor while struggling to suppress a violent carnal urge that threatens his new wife. Simultaneously, this doctor's wife Corey, played by Beatrice Dow, is kept under literal lock and key, a captive to a condition that forces her to seduce and then literally consume any man she encounters in order to enable her escape. Director Claire Denis utilises vampirism primarily as an aesthetic and a physical state rather than a plot device. The narrative focus remains on the agonising wait for the next inevitable outburst of violence and consumption. The film is haunted by the concept of normal humans being reduced to a mere biological fuel, inevitably eaten or consumed by those burdened with the infection. These sequences are presented with a jarring, near-sexual intimacy where the act of feeding is indistinguishable from the act of intense lovemaking. The sound design is particularly oppressive, emphasising the wet, tactile reality of the hunger over the dialogue. By stripping the vampire myth of its fangs and capes, Denis creates a world where the horror is entirely internal, mapping a landscape of desire that is as lethal as it is unavoidable. Trouble Every Day remains a polarising and potent artefact of the new French extremity, a film that demands to be felt rather than merely watched, utilising the 4K format to emphasise its cold, tactile brutality. The Eureka disc is a fittingly robust tribute to a director who refuses to blink, providing a definitive version of a film that remains one of the most disturbing explorations of desire and intimacy ever committed to the screen. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Prime Cut is a grim, unpleasant, highly misogynistic and ultimately enjoyable dive into the rotting heart of the American Midwest. It's a gritty B-movie relic of the early 70s, presenting a world of dubious moral values where human life is traded with the same cold indifference as the livestock in a Kansas slaughterhouse. The film is a collision between the urban polish of the Chicago mob and the savage, feudal brutality of a rural meatpacking empire. While its treatment of women is undeniably regressive and stuck in the 70s, the film is still a fascinating chapter in early 70s cinema nihilism. The Kino Lorber 4K UHD offers a mostly splendid presentation of this grit-heavy production. The colour palette looks particularly vibrant, capturing the sickly sweet greens and yellows of the Kansas wheat fields and the murky browns of the slaughterhouse with newfound depth. While the encoding is largely robust, peering closely will detect instances of slight edge enhancement, manifesting as faint halos around the character outlines in high contrast scenes. Despite these minor digital artifacts, the UHD resolution provides a decent lift from the Blu-ray, stabilising the film's organic grain. Prime Cut centres on Nick Devlin, a Chicago mob enforcer played with a weary, lethal stoicism by Lee Marvin. Devlin is dispatched to Kansas City to collect a debt from Mary Ann, a local meatpacking kingpin who has begun sending his payments back to the city in the form of actual sausages made from previous collectors. Gene Hackman plays Mary Ann with a repulsive magnetic charm, ruling over a bizarre fiefdom where young women are drugged and sold like cattle at auction. The plot moves from the sterile boardrooms of Chicago to the sun-drenched, blood-soaked fields of the Midwest, culminating in a series of violent confrontations involving combine harvesters and submachine guns. The film is elevated by these two central powerhouse performances. Marvin and Hackman provide a weight and gravity that the script's more exploitation-heavy elements don't necessarily earn. Traditional boundaries of law and order have completely dissolved into a raw struggle for dominance. Sissy Spacek appears in an early role as one of the merchandise women Devlin attempts to rescue, adding a layer of vulnerability to a film that otherwise operates with a cold masculine brutality. Prime Cut leans into its own ugliness, using the meatpacking industry as a heavy-handed but effective metaphor for the way society grinds down the individual. It's an essential, if deeply uncomfortable, artifact of 70s exploitation, a film that succeeds almost entirely on the back of its lead performances and its unflinching willingness to be genuinely repellent. The Kino Lorber 4K mostly ensures this grim movie is preserved with the visual punch it deserves, providing a definitive version of a story that refuses to play by anyone's rules. Prime Cut remains a stark, blood-slick chapter in the annals of the American crime film. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. High Noon is a lean, stark deviation from the mythic romanticism of the American Western, clocking in at a precise 85 minutes. The film operates in near real time, stripping away the genre's usual sprawling vistas in favour of a claustrophobic, ethical pressure cooker. Presenting a social dilemma that serves as a thinly veiled critique of McCarthy-era isolationism and the fragility of communal courage, this is a story of a lawman abandoned by the town he protected, left to face a looming threat in a vacuum of civic cowardice. Often imitated but never bettered, it's still one of the greatest Western thrillers ever made. The Eureka Video 4K UHD turns in a fine job of preserving this black and white classic on home video. Encoded by the industry-leading fidelity and motion, the disc manages the fine grain of the original photography with a transparency that avoids the digital artifacts seen in lesser releases. The high bitrate presentation stabilizes the stark, high-contrast exteriors that defines the film's visual identity, resolving the textured grain pleasingly and filmically. Visually, this betters all previous Olive and Eureka Blu-ray versions and strongly rivals the Kino Lorber US 4K release. The plot follows Will Kane, played by Gary Cooper, a long-serving marshal who has just turned in his badge to marry his Quaker bride Amy, played by Grace Kelly, and start a peaceful life. His retirement is instantly derailed by news that Frank Miller, a violent killer Kane sent to prison years prior, has been pardoned and is arriving on the noon train to seek revenge. While his new wife and the town elders urge Kane to flee, his conscience forces him back into town to organise a posse. The narrative tension builds as Kane moves from the church to the local tavern, pleading for assistance, only to be met with excuses, resentment, and flat-out refusal from the citizens he once spent his life protecting. As the clock ticks towards 12, the townspeople retreat behind closed doors, leaving Kane to walk the main street alone. The music and editing set the benchmark for Hollywood suspense. Dmitry Tiomkin's rhythmic ballad functions as a sonic countdown, while the editing sharpens the conflict through constant, timely cuts to the station clock, culminating in a showdown both between Kane's physical enemies and ideological. High Noon is a vital, uncompromising piece of cinematic history that remains as impactful today as it was in 1952. By stripping the Western down to its minimalist essence, director Zinnemann created a work that transcends genre to become a universal study in individual conscience. The Eureka 4K disc ensures that this appointment with death is preserved in its most stable and visually striking form. It is essential, lean, and utterly devastating. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Night of the Juggler is a relentless, chaotic odyssey, a high-velocity hybrid of the kidnap thriller and the urban chase movie. It exists in a stylistic space of its own, trading polished studio tension for a murky, breathless energy that never allows the viewer to reset. This is a document of a city in a state of permanent friction, where a simple case of mistaken identity spirals into a desperate race through the decaying infrastructure of late 70s New York. The film is a grimy, propulsive work that thrives on the very disorder it depicts. The Radiance film's 4K UHD provides a meticulously restored presentation of this gritty urban relic. Encoded with typical transparency by Fidelity in Motion, the disc honours the film's low-light, high-speed origins by maintaining strong, organic grain levels throughout. The colour palette is rendered with a realistic filmic accuracy that refuses to beautify the soot of the NYC streets. This high bitrate handling ensures even the most frantic, handheld sequences remain stable in native 2160p. A glorious restoration for a title that spent far too long languishing in the shadows of murky home video transfers and was very hard to find. The narrative ignites when a bitter kidnapper, Gus Soltic, snatches the daughter of ex-cop Sean Boyd, mistaking her for the child of a wealthy real estate developer. Soltic's motive is a twisted form of revenge against the developer he blames for destroying his family's neighbourhood. What follows is a frantic, citywide pursuit as Boyd, played by James Brolin with a determined excellence, tears through the 5 boroughs to reclaim her. His mission is complicated by a corrupt and crumbling system, personified by Dan Hedaya's crazed Detective Sergeant Barnes, who is more hell-bent on thwarting his former partner than rescuing the girl. The film serves as a guided tour of the New York underbelly, moving from the neon-slicked filth of Times Square peep shows to the parched, abandoned lots of the South Bronx. The momentum is derived from a relentless pace, with Brolin's physical performance anchoring the chaos as he navigates a gauntlet of street gangs and urban decay. It is a ride that prioritizes the hunt over traditional narrative neatness, capturing the sensory overload of a city that feels like it's actively trying to swallow the protagonist. Night of the Juggler is a vital, high-octane artifact of the New York street thriller era. It understands that the setting is as much a villain as the kidnapper, utilising its grimy aesthetic to create a sense of genuine peril. The Radiance 4K disc finally grants this chaotic masterpiece the technical weight it deserves, preserving every shard of glass and puff of steam in the New York City air. It's relentlessly enjoyable and a cult classic that now benefits from a fabulous presentation and restoration. And that's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Cliff in Colour captures the calculated attempt to replicate the Elvis Presley cinematic template for British audiences with local pop star Cliff Richard. These Technicolor musicals represent a specific era of UK pop culture transition, where Cliff was positioned as the sanitised, homegrown alternative to American rock and roll rebellion. The collection, comprising The Young Ones, Summer Holiday and Wonderful Life, is a vibrant documentation of the pre-Beatles pop landscape. While the narratives are thin, designed solely to facilitate high-energy musical set pieces, they remain significant relics of a time when the British film industry sought to weaponise teenage fandom into box office gold. And now Indicator have released this very colourful box set, surprisingly in the US only. Blu-ray set utilises 4K restorations from StudioCanal that present a frustratingly mixed bag in terms of restorations. The Young Ones emerges as the technical standout, maintaining a filmic integrity with decent grain levels, despite colours that lean towards the oversaturated. Summer Holiday follows a similar trajectory. The image is heavily contrasted and saturated and looks dated with its digital remastering, yet it largely succeeds in capturing the bright, travelogue aesthetic of the production. The outlier is Wonderful Life. StudioCanal's treatment of this title suggests they struggle with a variable quality original negative. Rather than allowing for visual inconsistency, the restorers opted for a digital veneer, layering on extreme contrast and a thick, chunky artificial grain. The result is a presentation that feels upscaled and sharpened rather than restored, particularly during the credits, which bear the hallmarks of an upscaled DVD source. It is a digital approximation of film that prioritizes a uniform, aggressive look over authentic analog quality. Despite all of these shortcomings, the encoding from Fidelity in Motion, who do all of Indicator's releases, is first rate as usual. The trilogy follows a rigid formula of youthful optimism versus stodgy authority. In The Young Ones, Cliff plays Nicky, the son of a ruthless property tycoon who leads a youth club in a bid to save their community centre from his father's bulldozers, staging a variety show to raise the funds. Summer Holiday shifts to a lighter tone. 4 London bus mechanics convert a double-decker into a mobile hotel, driving across Europe and picking up a trio of singing girls and a runaway American starlet. Summer Holiday is a beloved British favourite, the second biggest film in the UK in 1963 behind James Bond's From Russia with Love. In Wonderful Life, we find the troupe shipwrecked in the Canary Islands, where they inadvertently stumble onto a film set and end up replacing the cast in a sprawling desert epic. While the movies themselves are light to the point of transparency, the musical numbers act as the structural spine. Cliff lacks the dangerous charisma that defined Elvis's early screen presence, but he remains a technically proficient and very engaging musical performer. The choreography of the dance numbers, backed by the sheer energy of the Shadows' accompaniment, provide a gusto that the thin scripts don't really compete with, and yet these films utilise the wide Technicolor frame to showcase the peak of the British beat era, prioritising the variety show format over cinematic storytelling. Whilst each of the films are probably 30 minutes too long, pushing towards 2-hour running times as opposed to a more suited 80 minutes, they hit their briefs and were huge successes. Cliff in Colour is a fascinating chronicle of the British musical's last gasp before the hurricane arrival of the Beatles in A Hard Day's Night. While the StudioCanal restorations vary from filmic to overly digitally processed, the Indicator set is a beautifully looking and fun collection for those tracking the history of 60s pop cinema. It captures a performer doing his best to fill a larger-than-life template, a series of films that are as bright and occasionally synthetic as the era that birthed them. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. Mike Nichols' The Graduate arrived in 1967 like a hand grenade rolled quietly under the door of the American dream. Dustin Hoffman's blank, drifting face staring into the middle distance from a moving walkway is the precise image of a culture that had built everything and understood nothing. A film so precisely calibrated to its moment that the moment never quite recovered. The suburban utopia turning on itself, not with a roar, but with the slow, suffocating hiss of a deflating swimming pool toy and the smouldering seduction of Mrs. Robinson. Now StudioCanal have delivered a 4K UHD restoration, but does it finally grant this landmark the presentation its legacy demands? StudioCanal's 4K restoration, sourced from the original camera negative, represents a nice transformative upgrade. Robert Surtees' cinematography, all shallow focus, oppressive close-ups, and the hermetically sealed geometry of Pasadena wealth, finally resolves with the filmic density it was always meant to carry. Grain is stable and organic throughout. The pool sequences shimmer with an aquatic, sun-bleached clarity. Colour timing for the film has always leaned towards the warm, slightly desaturated palette, avoiding the over-pushed contrast of earlier transfers. Shadow detail in the film is recovered without digital intervention, and the encode is robust with a high bit rate. Comfortably the most technically authoritative home presentation the film has received. Dustin Hoffman's Benjamin Braddock is one of cinema's great uncomfortable performances. Awkward, passive, and chronically incapable of volition, Benjamin drifts from the Robinsons' pool to the Ambassador Hotel to Berkeley without ever once deciding anything, he is propelled entirely by the desires of others. First Mrs. Robinson's predatory pragmatism, then his own infantile fantasy of Elaine as escape route. Hoffman trades on his own physical ungainliness, moving through the film's pristine environments like a man who arrived at the wrong party and lacked the conviction to leave. Anne Bancroft's Mrs. Robinson remains the film's most ruthlessly intelligent creation, often reduced to a punchline, the predatory older woman, the cautionary tale, the cougar. She's in fact the only character who has looked directly at the machinery of her own life and accepted what she saw. Her seduction of Benjamin isn't passion, it's boredom elevated to philosophy. A woman who married the deal instead of the man, and has been performing the consequences ever since. Bancroft plays Mrs. Robinson with a controlled, cigarette-smoked fury that makes every scene crackle with cold intelligence. Incredible that she was just 35 at the time. Mike Nichols directs with a visual and metaphorical style that mirrors the suffocation it depicts. Glass, water and plastic everywhere. The visual language of wealth that insulates rather than nourishes. Simon and Garfunkel's classic score functions not as accompaniment but as interior monologue. The sound of silence less a song than a diagnosis. The revolution lasted approximately 40 seconds. Benjamin Braddock is not a hero of the counterculture, he is its most honest self-portrait, aimless, entitled and emotionally arrested, reaching for liberation without any clear idea of what he'd do with it. His generation are graduating into what? StudioCanal's 4K UHD is the definitive presentation, grain intact, palette honest, the swimming pool, the summer suburban malaise and Mrs. Robinson have never seemed so seductive. That's all from us at The Last Disc on Earth, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail. And that was 20 spotlights from The Last Disc on Earth. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, come the apocalypse, physical media will prevail.